What's up, Troy?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Wiggle Wednesday.
While people are streaming in here, let's just see where everybody's from. I see Cheryl checked in. We've got looks like Arthur, Sean, Greg here.
Colorado, Tennessee.
Greg. Hey, Greg, I am gonna get that. I'm gonna get an email out about the podcast. It's built and ready to go. I just haven't pressed send. So, anyway, I had a great time on Greg's Urban Farm podcast. We actually recorded it this summer. And then it just with production, he produces a lot ahead of time. So we're going to get some, we're going to get that out to everybody. So hopefully get some listeners for you there, Greg. Let's see. Debbie's here on Facebook. She's out there in Colorado. What do we got? Scott, Northeast Ohio, and
Illinois, Charlottesville.
Yeah. Hey, Jennifer. I'm going to mention Jennifer here in a little bit. Got Kevin. Let's see here. I didn't mean to put Kevin up there. I don't know if you did that or if I did.
I did by accident on my touch screen.
Okay. There's AJ. It's good to have everybody here. We'll give people just a couple more minutes and we'll get into what we're talking about today. You guys are going to have to listen to me blabber on today. I'm going to give Troy the day off. He's going to work the comments and we'll answer some questions. It's going to be like a little bit of a normal live stream. We'll talk about Urban Worm products, talk about the discount program that we've got right now, a couple different discount programs, and then we'll do some open Q&A like we always do. It's just anything about composting, vermicomposting, soil biology, which is going to be more in Troy's purview there than mine. But we'll go through this stuff fairly quickly. We'll give people just a couple more minutes. Yeah, thanks everybody for checking in. Charles, I think this is your multiple time guy here from Florida. There's Paul Picarillo, Dr. Worm, Paulie Picarillo from Kansas. A lot of familiar names here, so it's good to see everybody. We've got our regulars. It's kind of like Cheers. Of course, I'm dating myself if I'm talking about Cheers, right? I don't know. So anyway, cool. I tell you what, I think we've got a quorum here. We got about 30 people mostly on YouTube. So let's go ahead and do what we're going to do. I just want to cover real fast. I'm going to give people a sneak peek about next week's live stream, and then we'll give them another sneak peek next week. I will not be here. I'm going to be out on the road, but Troy is going to be talking about basically preparing worm food for how best to prepare worm food for worms. It's not just a matter of dumping worm, kitchen waste into an urban worm bag or whatever it is that you're using. Sometimes it helps to prepare it certain ways. And by prepare it, I don't mean necessarily cook it, but I mean whether you can chop it up or puree it in some cases. What do you do with bedding? Like for me, I have my techniques on what I like to use. I will add bedding to the stuff before I ever put it in the worm bin. So Troy will be covering stuff like that, and we'll give people another sneak peek on the way out of this. So with that, I just want to I'm going to preview today and say that this is going to feel like a little bit more of a salesy live stream. I really like to use our social media and YouTube-y stuff like this for informational rather than salesy stuff. Today's a little bit salesy because we're going to be offering you a discount. But I want people to know that you don't have to buy a product to do what worms do by themselves in nature. And so the vermicomposting products like the urban worm bag and everything else we're going to talk about, it doesn't make vermicomposting possible. It just makes it easier. And that's kind of what I want to hit on today. And none of the things we talk about are absolute must-haves for you as you kind of continue your vermicomposting journey. So with that, I'm going to share the screen here with Troy and I, and then we'll go through these slides. Sorry, we were previewing the slides before we got on. Troy, do you mind taking that?
Yeah, I'll grab the banner.
Okay, cool. So welcome to December 7th live stream here. I'm Steve Churchill. This is Troy Hankey, right?
Hey, everybody.
Where is it? Down there. we are going to do a little bit of a product tour, just talk about the products that we have here at the Urban Worm Company, and then give you some discounts here. Two discount programs that we have for the next few days. So happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, a little ahead of time to everybody out there. Cool. So as most of you know, Urban Worm Company is the manufacturer of the Urban Worm Bag. The two main Urban Worm Bags we have is the Urban Worm Bag 2.0 and the Urban Worm Bag Eco. They work exactly the same. They're the same dimensions. They actually look identical. There's just a couple differences here. And I'll just talk real quickly about the Urban Worm Bag 2.0. It's a fabric bin, 900 denier Oxford fabric for those I don't know, the fabric nerds out there that know what 900 denier means. It's basically the thickness, I believe, of the woven fabric. It's got a zippered lid, which is how you open it up to feed it. The bottom, which was redesigned a couple years ago, has got the snap, basically buckles and Velcro and a fully removable bottom. And then the inside has an inside liner that closes with the drawstring. So the inside closes with the drawstring, and then you can put the fully removable bottom on. And then that bottom can be used actually to collect the castings if you so choose. Urban Worm Bag Eco, basically identical, and it's too identical actually to the Urban Worm Bag version 2.0 because it just looks the same. The big differences are it's just made with a recycled material called RPET, which is recycled plastic bottles. They basically take plastic bottles and they weave that stuff into a fabric that they then create this RPET material with. It's got the same design. The workmanship is just as good, maybe even better than the version 2.0. It's also made in North America. It's made in Tijuana, Mexico. And I'm going to go visit the plant here in January and see how things are going down there. But really love being able to offer a more sustainable product here for our folks, especially the folks that don't care to support Asian dictatorships. So anyway, happy to do that. Let's go into talking about how the thing works, though. Like I said, you feed it through the top and you collect the castings through the bottom. And so if you think of this stuff in sort of like regions of the Urban Worm Bag, you got the top where the stuff is sort of recognizable as food waste still. Underneath that, the stuff's going to really start breaking down. The worms and the microbes are going to be breaking down this material. And it's going to start looking a little bit more homogeneous. And the stuff at the bottom really should be fully broken down. I mean, we're talking after a couple months here, the stuff is really going to start being fully broken down. There are some things, if you're using wood chips or things like that maybe won't break down from top to bottom, but the bottom should be really consistent product. And then, this is obviously, I'll just say obviously a staged picture here, but you can use that bottom to take out those castings out of the bottom of your Urban Worm Bag. So a couple frequently asked questions people have about this, especially if they're new to the Urban Worm Bag, is they're like, why is there no tap? Every other worm farm I see has this tap, and that tap is meant to save you from your own mistakes. So a lot of people think that worm bins are supposed to create what they call tea, which is actually leachate. In this case, I don't want to encourage this at all. So the Urban Worm Bag does not have that tap. If you are producing leachate out of the bottom of a worm bin, then especially after the worm bin's been established for a while, then it's too wet. You're not adding enough bedding along the way. A good worm bin should not be producing this leachate. A lot of people ask the two questions I'll consider somewhat the same. How much can I put in here, and how much can it produce? I hate to be too prescriptive about these things, because if you are putting in a food, a quote unquote worm food like leaf mold, like my friend Marianne Smith of Valley View Worms does, that stuff is almost all broken down. You can load this thing up with leaf mold and the worms are gonna finish it off. You could have a 6-inch layer of it and they're probably gonna do their best to consume all of it. If you're using a whole lot of food waste, then you really only want what would amount to about, let's just call it a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of that food waste along the top of your vermicompost. And then you want to actually mix in twice that volume of bedding into that material too. So think 2 parts bedding, 1 part food waste in your urban worm bag, but you don't want your food waste to be more than about a ½ inch at a time, or otherwise you start attracting fruit flies and whatnot. How much you can put in it obviously depends on how much it can produce. I would say somebody like Marianne is getting a gallon to a gallon and a half of vermicompost or worm castings out of the bottom of her urban worm bags every week. That is a lot. I would say for most people that are using food waste, so much of food waste is water content, and that water content has to be absorbed. It basically that water does not become food waste, or it does not become worm castings, right? So it's going to reduce in volume by a ton. So you can put a lot of food waste in there and then really only get a little bit of worm castings out. So I would say, somebody asked me this the other day, and I'm taking kind of a guess here, but about I would imagine you can get about a gallon to a gallon and a half of worm castings out per month, maybe 2 per month. So again, I hate to be wishy-washy on that, but what you can get out of it really depends on what you can put in. Another common question is, can it be used outdoors? The answer is yes, it can. I would say that you have to have it protected from sun and rain. Definitely sun, and it needs to be protected from rain. We've got a few things coming down the pike that are going to help out with that. We've got a cover that will come out with most likely in the spring. Unfortunately, won't be able to have it for the winter, but we've got something in development right now that people can use as a cover, and I'm really excited about that. It'll make it a bit more of an all-weather kind of product.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please.
I was just going to mention, I didn't hear you say it, for all the beginners and newbies, what's great about the urban worm bag is it's taking advantage of the epigeic worm's nature to stay in the upper sections of the material, and other things on the market, like the stackable bins. I've made my own stackable bins. I've also done the whole just like 1 bin at a time, where you're putting a bunch of compost, or making vermicompost and then having to dump the whole thing out and separate the worms. What's the hardest thing about worm composting is getting worms away from the finished product of the worm compost. Stackable, so when you've got a giant bin system, you're having to dump the whole thing, separate the worms. It's a lot of work. When you've got the stackable systems, which I've done before, unless you're using pre-composted material and getting those worms to move quickly, you're always going to have worms that are ending up in the other stackable bins and still having to separate worms. What's good about the urban worm bag is, like I said, it's working with the nature of the worms, and in this type of system, you're way more likely to have those worms in the upper half of that bag and not having to sift out a whole lot of worms from that finished vermicompost. That's what makes that urban worm bag so good.
Cool. Thanks for that, Troy. I sometimes miss those details.
Yeah. The size of it too, if you want to mention the size for people.
Yeah, the size is about 28 inches by 28 inches square by about 31 inches tall. So it's it's a big worm bin. It's wider than a dishwasher, but if you think of the depth and the height of a dishwasher, that's about it. So these go great in mud rooms, utility rooms. These are not something that's going to be able to be fit under under your kitchen sink. But the volume allows for much higher volume of input and of output that you might otherwise have. About the outside, one of the things that when people use this outside, one of the problems with that is that it's often on an uneven surface, especially even if it's on a porch or something like that, which is often going to have a slope. So one of the things we came up with were cross straps that allow you to give the frame a lot more rigidity and a lot less sway. So when you have a rigid frame like we have, but a bag that's hanging off of it, the bag is always going to be kind of falling down, always going to be pulled in the direction of gravity, where the frame is always going to be sideways. So you've got kind of this misalignment of forces there. So this helps stiffen that frame up a little bit, and it puts a lot less stress on the connectors. And speaking of the connectors, for those that have had their bags outside and found that they've got some broken connectors, we do have replacements available on the website. And you can buy 1, you can buy 2, you can buy a whole set of 8 if need be. Next up is the urban worm blanket. This is a blanket that's made out of jute. This is something that you would lay on top of your vermicompost in order to help retain moisture and retain a little bit of heat, add a little bit of an insulation layer on there. I think it's probably more effective when it comes to kind of regulating moisture. If you're putting a dry urban worm blanket on top of material that's otherwise wet, it's going to help sort of wick up some of that excess moisture. It's a natural material called jute, which jute is typically made in India. These are made in India. This is sized for the urban worm bag, but if people are using a sub pod or a hungry bin or something like that, even a worm factory, this will work just fine in there, and you can cut it to whatever size you need. The material can be cut with just regular scissors. Let's see here. Coconut coir. Coconut coir is another product that it's not made of the same stuff as jute, but it's made, of course, from coconut. It's made from the waste of coconut production. So they take the hulls and husks, and they grind them down, and they dehydrate them, and they put them in these bricks that can then be rehydrated later. It kind of makes for a nice soil-like substance, very fluffy substance. Because these are from tropical, trees near the ocean, they tend to be salty. So whatever coconut coir you buy needs to be rinsed for salt. And so coconut coir is a urban worm coconut coir, I should say, is a low salt, low EC, as the experts might call it, low electrical conductivity coconut coir. It comes in single, basically, if you look at this is a 6-pack that we're looking at. But you can get one little brick of coconut coir, you can get 2, you can get a 6-pack as pictured, or you can get them in 24-pack master cartons. We also have the bigger 5-kilogram blocks that are that will make a lot more. So each one of these little blocks will make about 2.5 gallons, these little ones. The bigger blocks, the 11-pound, the 5-kilo blocks, will make about 2.25 cubic feet. So they expand to far greater than their initial volume. And so each one of these little blocks, and I'll show you a picture here in a second, you can add about 3/4 of a gallon to it. It's amazing how much they just soak up. I've got some time-lapse videos I've done. I should have posted one here of the water being added and what happens. It just soaks up an incredible amount of water. These are popular, of course, not just with worm bin folks, but people who are growing in microgreens and cannabis growers. And I would say that of the deals that we have that we're going to talk about here at the end, this is probably the most attractive deal we've got for the coconut coir. So I just want to show you one thing that's kind of cool about our coconut coir is it comes in these bags that can be opened up and you pour the water right in. Otherwise, you're having to unwrap the plastic off of something and then put it into a mortar tray or a bucket and then add water to it. And then you got to get your hands dirty. I realize a lot of us like getting our hands dirty, but in this case, you don't. You can just pour the water right in. I pour it in a little bit slowly. Otherwise, the thing may start to tip out, but you can just pour the water in, let it absorb that stuff, and then just knead that coconut coir apart and turn it into that soil-like texture. And you can use whatever you need at that time and then keep the rest of it. You don't have to, you can seal that bag back up and keep that kind of moist coconut coir hydrated for later. Did I miss anything there on coconut coir, Troy?
No, I was going to mention that same thing, that if instead of breaking pieces off, it's best to just do it all at once and then pull out from that. And even if it dries out, you've got that fluffy texture after the water's added. It's expanded. And then even if it dries out, you just add a little bit more water once you use it, but at least it's broken up and loose.
Yeah, and this would be considered a bedding in a worm bin. So I didn't mention that up front. This would be one of those kind of carbony beddings. If you didn't have enough shredded paper, shredded cardboard, stuff like that. The reason I like coconut coir is it's already like a soil-like texture, and so it breaks down fairly quickly. Sometimes when you're harvesting these things, you'll find a few of the little coconut fibers that are still in there, but I like that it's a soil-like substance. It's not like something chunky like cardboard that has to break down. So next thing up here is an urban worm thermometer. I had these produced, wanted to make sure that they encompassed, of course, the range that we would see with vermicomposting. These are not compost thermometers, which will go up to close to 190 degrees, I think. These have a range of 20 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got a 5-inch stainless steel stem. there are markings on the face of the, and you can probably see it in the pictures there. The markings on the face of the thermometer that kind of show you what your green zone is, where the worms are happiest. So that's the green. And then once you get outside, you've got yellow, and then you've got red when you're kind of in the danger zone, whether too cold or too hot. So the one thing people ask is, how do I use this? And it's one of those questions that I'm like, I thought that would be fairly obvious, but you would just fully insert this stem into your vermicompost, and it's going to give you a pretty accurate representation of what your temperature is. If you have compost that is not, if you have a worm bin that is not yet 5 inches deep, then you probably could insert it at an angle, but just make sure that the entire stem is covered in your material. Next up here is worm chow. This is really popular, I think, with people who are worm breeders. It's used as a supplement to just fatten up the worms. And I want to stress supplement here. You just want to sprinkle a little bit of this on top. This is not meant to be a primary food for the worms. It's too rich in protein. It is too potent of a food in order to have a whole lot of this in your bin. Like I said, a lot of worm breeders will use this. One of the reasons why a worm breeder wants fat worms with the most biomass possible is that if they are selling you a pound of worms, then they can sell you fewer worms. And one thing I notice with people that they complain, they don't complain, but they say, my worms in my worm bin that I've been vermicomposting with are much skinnier than the worms that I got. And one of these reasons is why the worms are thriving. They're doing perfectly fine, but they just may not be as fat because they may have been fed with some of this stuff before they got to you. And so my worms in my worm bin are really pretty skinny. But I think they're thriving just fine. They're reproducing. It's just they are smaller. But if you want to fatten them up, the worm chow is a way to do it. All right, next up here is a worm bin accessory bundle. This is, of course, things we've already talked about. So those coconut core bricks, blocks, I should say. You got 2 urban worm blankets and then the urban worm thermometer. This can sort of be purchased as a discounted bundle. Again, this is one of those things, an experienced vermicomposter does not need this stuff. It just can make startup easier and make life a little easier in the beginning. And if you do go to buy the urban worm bag, we do have a variation, and this is only available right now on the urban worm bag version 2, is that if you get the accessories with it, which is a variation of the product, you can either buy the bag by itself or you can buy it with the accessories. You get all of these things plus the 6 frame straps that I showed you earlier. Let's see here. Okay, worm castings. I know we're all here trying to make worm castings, but for those of you who maybe are going to be starting this a little bit too late in order to have your own worm castings for spring, buying worm castings may be a really, really good option for you. I really like our worm castings. We do have a supplier of these now, and these are not produced by us here at the Urban Worm Company, but they pass muster, and I would say they're probably better than the castings we were producing about 2 years ago. High biology, there are recent test results that we have available. If you actually go to the bulk worm castings product page that we have, and by bulk, I mean like if you want to buy like a ton, we've got the test results, both standard compost test and the biological test results that are available. I probably should post those to our regular product page. But these can be bought in 2, 10, and 5 pound, 2, 5, and 10 pound bags. We do have a subscription plan that's available for 20% off. That's an ongoing thing. So if you sign up for a subscription, we'll send these to you for 20% off, and we'll send them to you either every 3 months or every 6 months of whatever the product is. I think these are only available for 10 pounds, the subscriptions, but we've got quite a few subscription customers for that. A question somebody would ask this time of year, because a lot of us aren't thinking about using worm castings until the spring, is, are these going to keep well? Or like, I don't want to lose the biology in the worm castings. Well, the castings will be fine and may even somewhat improve over time if you keep them protected from sun and extreme temperatures. So if you buy some worm castings, keep them and by extreme, I mean, you could get down to 30 or 40 degrees and the biology will slow down, but it's not going to die. You really only have to worry if this stuff is left out in the sun, or if you are someplace where you're going to get a real fast deep freeze. Someplace that's moderate, like Oklahoma through even where we are here in Philadelphia, you're going to be just fine, even if you keep them in an unheated environment, because they'll pop right back to life come the spring thaw. So you can buy these things ahead of time and keep them, and they'll be just fine. I do want to mention that we do have bulk worm castings that are for sale. These are for people that need a whole lot to amend their gardens, or if they want to blend them to make other soils. We can give these. We send these out in 1,000, 2,000, and it's not 2,500, but it's 2,250 pound pallets. And our prices on our website do include shipping. It does not include a lift gate if you need one for a lift gate, but we can get you guys a whole crap ton of worm castings as well if you need more than 10 pounds at a time.
Yeah, I was going to mention real quick too, as far as storing them, and that may be a good topic for a future Wiggle Wednesday, is storing vermicast or worm castings.
Yeah.
The biggest thing you don't want to do is allow that stuff to dry out on top of UV rays. Drying out the material is going to have the harmful effect on microorganisms. So like Steve had mentioned, they can even get better over time, because all this vermicompost is just food for microorganisms. So what's likely to happen is that you'll have bacteria that may decrease a little bit in populations, but you're going to have fungi that takes off on the food sources that take longer to grow. So you're still going to keep that good biology in there. You just need to make sure that it stays moist, because microorganisms need moisture to survive.
Yeah, and it looks like we've got a couple questions about storing the worm castings. The thing I sort of default to is, when it comes to storing worm castings, what you're doing is trying to store life. And so, food, shelter, protection, clothing, whatever you think that we need is kind of what microbes need. If you think of the temperatures that we like to stay at and the moisture levels, we need water to survive. So yes, moisture. It helps to have a food source, of course, but here's the thing: is worm castings are organic matter. What do microbes consume? Organic matter. So unless the worm castings are sitting forever, where the organic matter is just constantly getting consumed by the biology, then you're gonna be just fine. You've got the biology, you've got the food for the biology in the worm castings. So they will keep for quite a while. In fact, our supplier had his castings tested 6 months after he basically took 2 samples, kept them aside, sent one off to get tested, and then waited 6 months and sent the other one off to get tested. And they came back very, very similar in pH, very similar in, the carbon and nitrogen ratio, and then, the available nitrogen and all that stuff. And then the biology remained really, really stable too. So thanks for bringing that up and clarifying on that.
Yeah.
Cool. This is something I'm really, really excited about. There are new designs, and this is just a mock-up, and none of these are likely to be our designs coming up, but we are able to, one of the things we're able to do with our small batch manufacturing in Mexico is come up with new designs, not just new colors, but patterns and stuff like that. And I'm really excited about being able to experiment with something like that. I was approached by an urban worm bag user. I believe she bought in early 2020. So she's been with us for a while, and she said, "I am a pattern designer and I would love to help you out." Her name's Jennifer Knight. I think Jennifer is on this live stream somewhere. And none of these are her. I'm going to get to her designs here in a second. But she reached out and said, "I would really, really like to design some patterns for you." And so we've been talking, actually just had a nice call yesterday, and we're probably going to move forward on some options for urban worm bag users here in the spring. And so I'm going to get to the next slide. This is her first, one of her first designs that we're looking at. This is her retro mushroom design. I want to mention real fast, Jennifer owns New Wing Studios in Virginia. She does this stuff for t-shirts and different fabric, and of course now urban worm bags. And Troy, if you can drop, if you haven't already, put Jennifer's Instagram, the New Wing Studios Instagram, in the chat.
Yep, it's in the chat right now. If you want to, if anybody wants to look at her Instagram page.
Yeah. And if you think of it, if you can even maybe make the banner there. You know what? I don't have a banner, but yeah, New Wing Studios. Check her out on Instagram. But this is the retro mushroom pattern that we may put out. I'm really kind of excited about that. Of course, mushrooms are the rage these days. Mushrooms are sexy, and so I'm really excited for to bring this one out possibly. The next one up is a fun little camo thing. Troy, if you actually take that and you could show it, but show it as a banner going across the bottom.
Yeah, I was trying to. I don't know. For some reason, it didn't do it as that.
There we go. I got it. Let's see here. It's a ticker. Yeah, there we go. So I really like this one. This is a camouflage pattern, but the camo is made up of kind of wormy sort of things. I see one. This couple of these guys looks like Casper the Friendly Ghost, but Casper the Friendly Worm, if you will. Kind of excited for that. One of the things with me and branding is I like more subtlety than a lot of the really, really cartoony stuff that you see. And so I like a camo pattern, but something that sort of embeds worms in it. And so I thought that this was really a kind of a neat design. So I think this is probably one we're going to move forward on. And then the next one here, near and dear to my heart, good US of A. We came up with a patriotic design here. It's funny, I was talking to Jennifer yesterday, and we were both in agreement that I didn't really want to put the American flag on here, just for a few reasons. One of which is like this stuff gets dirty. It sort of hurts my heart to see a dirty American flag. And so, but you know what? If we can show some stars and stripes in a different way, and I think she pulled it off here. So expect to see some mock-ups coming out via email if you're on our email list for these urban worm bag designs, maybe soliciting some feedback. We might do a pre-order of these, and I'll see what discounts that we can do to make this still economically viable, but we may have to do 50 of these at a time, kind of limited runs. But I'm really kind of excited for where we can go and what Jennifer and New Link Studios can help us out with. So let's move on to, I forgot about this one. I talked about an all-weather option. This is a future option that we'll have. It's currently in development. Is a cover, kind of like a tented cover for the top of the urban worm bag. This would be like a tent material. It would be domed just like a tent. The guys right now in Tijuana are coming up with I think a more of a full cover for this. What's going to happen is there's a little area. Of course, you can't see my cursor, but the area you currently see that's open is going to be sort of you can open it with a zipper. It should not be allowing. It's sort of like a tent, the opening of a tent. And so we are going to be able to have this cover that's still going to allow you to open up the top of the bin and add food when necessary. But then there will also be like a skirt kind of around the bottom to also protect it from sort of sideways, if you have any of those hard rains, sideways rains and whatnot. Right now, the team is looking at how they can best secure it to the urban worm bag frame without it just blowing off in a heavy wind. And so we're working on that, but I've been really thrilled with what they've come up with so far. So this is something that's going to happen for us in the spring. So cool. Let's get to this now. And this is going to seem simple enough, but then I just need to stress a couple things. If you use Santa 15 at checkout, you can get 15% off almost all of our items. We have a discount eligible collection, which doesn't include things like the Michigan Soilworks CFT or our bulk worm castings, but most of our products are eligible for the Santa 15% off discount. You can buy that, go get your urban worm bag, and be on your way. We have a separate discount program for the products that you see here, which include worm castings, our coconut core, the worm chow, the thermometer. We actually have a 5-pack discounted thermometer pack, which actually still includes this. We have a coconut core with a thermometer promo, and the urban worm blankets. These items are available. If you buy one, you can get the same item for 50% off. And there's a couple catches here I just want to tell people. And this isn't because I'm stingy. It's because the code won't let me the computer code won't let me do this. You can't use 15% off and then get 50% off of that product. In fact, like I'm not offering this on something like the urban worm bag. But if you go to the website and try to use Santa 15, then it's not going to actually allow you to use both coupons at the same time. What I will tell people is that if you're interested in, say, 15% off an urban worm bag and then the buy one get one 50% off, that needs to be handled with separate transactions. So just check out and then come back to the store. You might even clear out your browser or restart your browser, come back to the store, and then you'll be offered these other. Well, I wouldn't say you'll be offered. You'll get notification that we have this buy one get one, but then you can check out with these products that you see here on the right side of your screen with the buy one get one 50% off. One more wrinkle with this, and I hate to make this more complicated than it is, but I know that people are going to have this question, is that you can't put multiple of these in your cart and get multiple buy one get ones. So if you want say a 6-pack coconut core, buy one get one 50% off, check out there, come back to the site, get the blanket again, and then you can get buy one get one there. So if you want like 3 things, it might have to be 3 separate transactions. If anybody has any questions about that, we'll stay available to ask or to answer any questions there. Troy, did I do okay explaining this?
Yeah, I don't think that you mentioned the free shipping included. So I clarified with Steve, like when you go on Amazon and order stuff, you save money by bundling your things with packaging. But with this, the shipping's free shipping. So even if you're going back and making, 4 or 5 orders, it's not like you're spending more on shipping. You're paying the same amount that you would if you ordered it as a bundle. So you're not losing out. You're not spending more money by having to put in multiple purchases.
Yeah, it's just a pain in the rear to maybe make 3 transactions for 3 different products. So I appreciate the clarification there, and we're going to clarify it on this anyway. So yes, you can use both discounts. You just can't use both discounts on the same transaction. So go ahead and make your purchase for anything 15% off. Go ahead and check out there. Then you can come back for the buy one get one offer. But again, multiple buy one get one discounts require multiple transactions. It's just the system's not smart enough to say, I'm going to give you I'm going to offer this to you on this chain of multiple different products. So anyway, if anybody has any questions with that, you can of course email us at email me at steve@urbanwormcompany.com with that. Cool. Let's go to the next slide. I think that's it. Troy, it looks like there's I see some comments here.
Yeah, I've got a few starred here. Some of them relate to the topic next week, so I don't know if we just want to wait. If you people are able to tune in next week, we'll be covering some of those things. One of the questions was, other than additives, it sounds like he's wondering if he can use something other than cocoa core. If I still add coconut core, what kind of percentage might you suggest? And someone else had a similar question for that. So yes, you can use bedding is going to be the same thing as brown or carbonaceous material. So in composting, we have green material, we have brown material. Bedding is going to be considered the brown material. Anytime you're adding it, you want to use a ratio of about 2 brown to 1 green. One thing that I know Steve and I both do, and we're going to be discussing next week, is when we're like collecting our food scraps, we're already mixing in some brown. So you have to take that into consideration when you're putting that into a bin.
One of the reasons why I do that is because that food waste is going to start breaking down, and I want something to sop it up. I don't want that stuff leaching to the bottom of the bucket that I have outside our sliding glass door, which is where I throw our food waste. I want a nice bed layer of bedding, and then I can put my food waste on top of that. And then that, as the food waste breaks down, and most of this food waste is 85% water, it's going to break down and then get absorbed by that bedding.
So yeah, that's going to control odors, and it's going to keep down pests like flies and fruit flies and things like that. Because I do the same thing as Steve. But yeah, you can use other things other than coconut coir. Steve had mentioned broken down leaves. Leaves are great for a worm bin. They're going to be good fungal food, and they break down well. And that's what a lot of soil is made up of. If you look out into the forest, is you got leaves every year that are being composted and placed by the forest. Is it a good idea? Next question. Is it a good idea to just leave worm castings in the worm bag and build bulk for the spring? So referring to the urban worm bag, is it a good idea to leave them in the worm bag until the spring and to harvest it out and save? My answer would be it depends on how fast you're feeding it. I'll let Steve do the majority of the answer for this.
Oh, don't pawn this one off on me. I think it depends. I mean, if you haven't harvested in a year, I would say yes, please harvest, because I would worry about the compaction and stuff that you have. I would go ahead and harvest and then just leave it aside. Now, I think if I would not be in a rush to harvest, but if you haven't harvested in 6 months, just go ahead and take some stuff out of the bottom and leave it aside. But otherwise, I don't think that there is a need to take anything out of the. I think you can leave it in there. It's a microbially active community as long as it's not really wet in the bottom, and where you're going to get that compaction and possibly some of that anaerobic activity and odor happening in a wet worm bag. And one thing, if you're curious, I would at least take that removable bottom off, or unzip the bottom for those of you that have some of the older version 2s, and I would check it out and see how that stuff looks. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Yep, I agree. Next question was about moisture. Someone said, keeping it moist, how often in a 5-gallon bucket storage? I don't know if you mean how often do you need to keep it watered. I would just check it. If you got, so I moved up to Pennsylvania a year and a half ago, and I had made many yards of compost, which I sold, but I kept some to use for my compost tea business. And I brought a 55-gallon barrel of compost up with me that's been aging for 2 years now almost, and I keep it in basically a garbage can with a lid that's just like set on top, and then it's just continuously breaking down over time. So you just want to make sure that you're not losing water. If you've got it in some place that's going to be a dry, somewhere where you're losing moisture from evaporation or heat or whatever like that. If you live in a desert area, you're going to want to spray it more, or just make sure you're misting it and keeping a look at it. But that's why it's good to keep things covered, especially. So keeping a bucket with a lid on it, or cardboard over the top, or bubble wrap or something like that to keep moisture in.
Cool.
And then the other question was, should the bedding we add at feedings be dry? We'll be covering that next week, but if you're adding a bunch of wet food scraps, you're going to want to add some dry material to collect the water from those food scraps. But otherwise, if you're not putting bedding in, if you're putting bedding in without putting in food scraps, you're going to want to have it be moist. Yes.
I would say so. Yeah. And I would err on the side of being too moist. It's a lot easier to make a drier worm bin a little more moist than it is to make a really wet worm bin like have an appropriate moisture content. So I would say if you're adding food waste, which most vermicomposters are, I would add dry bedding with your food waste, because that food waste has a surprising people. Here's an example. You can take an apple in your hand, even an apple that you've cut into 10 pieces. It's not going to feel wet, but if you put that thing into a Vitamix, it will turn into water. Not because it changes the physical properties of it. It just literally chops it up into what it is, which is mostly water. So if you think about what a pureed food waste would look like, that is the kind of water we're talking about. So you want to be adding that bedding. And I know I pound this, I will to my grave to be stressing this, but add that bedding with your food waste, even if it doesn't feel like you need to, because there's so much water that's bound up in the walls of that food waste. Cool. Thanks for letting me hijack that for a second, Troy.
Yeah, I was also going to mention, if you do happen to have a worm bin, urban worm bag that is too wet, you could put some dry bedding in there and mix it in with the wet material to kind of soak up some of that extra moisture as well.
Yep. Greg from Urban Farm Podcast is asking, can we use cardboard? Absolutely, you can use cardboard. Corrugated cardboard is awesome. It's that stuff that's got the little wavy stuff in between the two layers. The worms love the glue. That's like a protein. They really shredded corrugated cardboard is an excellent bedding material. So yes, use cardboard. The stuff that you get from cereal boxes is actually something called paperboard or chipboard, which is really not so much a cardboard. It takes a lot longer to break down. Is much more dense. And so it's not really cardboard in the same sense that corrugated cardboard is cardboard. So, but yes, cardboard is a great bedding material. And to get back to the whole thing with coconut coir, if you can use coconut coir with some cardboard, with some paper, with some leaves for that added inoculum from the bacteria and stuff outside. So yeah, absolutely. Use cardboard with all those other materials. What else we got?
Greg had asked a question, which I answered online, but I think it would be good to bring it up now. He had asked, which we're also going to be discussing this somewhat next week, but does blendering or freezing food waste speed up the process? So it is going to, anytime you can reduce particle size and increase surface area, you're giving more surface area for microorganisms to break things down. That's why worms are a helper in the process, because they're working to break things down to allow bacteria and fungi to come in and break it down even farther. So blending food is going to help. And in my answer, I didn't get to explain it well, but I've known people who kind of just tested things where they put food scraps in a blender, blended it all up really well, and then they put that over the entire top of their bin. And it created kind of because there's so much moisture in there, it kind of created a seal where the worms didn't want to go up and penetrate through that. So that's why it can cause some issues. If you're doing that, you would just kind of want to make some pockets of the blender food where worms can escape and have access to air movement and airflow, where you're not covering the whole top of the bin.
Interesting. Okay. I like it.
Yeah. And then freezing food is going to help to burst the cells in the food, which will help to speed up the process. And we'll touch on that more next week as well.
Cool.
That's all the questions that I had seen.
Cool. Greg said best way to shred the cardboard, a cross-cut shredder. I think you can get cheaper ones on Amazon. There's probably higher quality ones you can get from a place like from a brand called Fellows, but a cross-cut shredder, especially, I think about it, if you're doing cardboard, you want a 12-sheet cross-cut shredder. It makes these tiny little squares out of your cardboard. So let's see here. Cheryl asked a good question, and this is about storing worm castings again. It's what's the lowest range that bins and finished castings, can be stored in? Let's just talk about the finished castings. She said she has castings in a food grade bucket, and asking if they should be tight or holes in the lid. I kind of like the idea of letting that oxygen in there, so I would have holes in that lid. As far as temperatures go, your worm castings can freeze, and the only issue is with the freezing. What happens is it freezes, the water expands, and then once it thaws, it sort of drains water out, and the freezing can dry out the castings. The freezing itself doesn't necessarily kill the biology. It's gonna sort of stop it and make it go dormant, in a sense. If you think of like Han Solo when he got frozen in Star Wars, but then came back to life. The same sort of thing can happen with worm castings, but you just don't want it to be like a flash freeze. So I think that as far as storing your castings, I wouldn't be that discriminating about that. Now, as far as where your bin is, you do want to keep your bin somewhere indoors, and this is an entirely different. We've done live streams and YouTube videos on this before. The one thing I would suggest is that's kind of the hack that I use, is using a seed starting mat, and we've got a link to that on our website under accessories. And maybe Troy, if you can maybe find that and post that. I don't know if we can do that in the time that we have.
Yeah.
But a seed starting mat on the surface of your vermicompost will keep it warm, but not really, really warm. Now, one thing Greg brought up earlier is that it's drying out the top of his mat. Like the seed starting mat is drying out the top of the surface of his vermicompost. And if that's happening, I would say either get a thermostat then you can buy these things with thermostats and little temperature probes, and just stick it right under the surface of your vermicompost. Don't bury it, but stick it right under the surface of your vermicompost. Set the thermometer or the thermostat to 72 degrees, and then just let it go. And then also just use a misting, like a spray bottle on a mist setting, and then you just mist the underside of that mat, and you'll keep things moist enough, especially limping things throughout through the winter. So.
They have those nice, what I like to use, it's like $10 at Ace Hardware, maybe $15 is so you can get a spray bottle like you use for cleaners and stuff, window cleaners, for like $3 or $4 at Home Depot, but you can get the like garden sprayers that are about this tall, like a foot, 15 inches tall, and they're like a ionizer or mister that you pump the thing and then it mists out really well, and it holds like half a gallon of water or more. Those work a lot better for worm bins. I would suggest those.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we might be starting to come to the end. If anybody's got anything else, go ahead and pipe in. If there's anything you think we missed, Troy, we can get to that.
I put the link in for that seed starter, the mat that you just mentioned. That's in the comments for anyone who wants to check that out.
Cool. All right. Well, again, next week, I will be on the road and won't be able to join, but Troy's going to talk about kind of preparing your worms for a fine dining, experience, and what we do. And we've already talked about this, kind of comparing notes on how we each separately manage our worm bins and not just worm bins, but the food ahead of time. And so I think there's going to be some good nuggets of information next week. So just want to say again, Santa 15 for checkout. That's only good for today and tomorrow. The buy one get one may remain for a few more days. So I would take advantage of these things. I really don't often. There are discounts here and there, but I don't really offer anything like this and too terribly often. So take advantage of it while you can. And especially that buy one get one. I'm gonna be flatly honest here. I over ordered things like coconut coir and worm blankets during the pandemic. With inflation going on, I ended up buying a heck of a lot more than what I would need over the course of the next year. And I would love to get rid of it and get rid of it at a steep discount and not pay the storage fees that I'm currently paying at my warehouse. So if you can help me get rid of it, I am more than willing to discount heavily your coconut coir, your blankets, some of even the thermometers and those accessory items. So anyway, I appreciate it, everybody. Troy, you got anything that was on your mind before we go for next week?
No, Steve had mentioned next week we're going to talk about feeding worms. So it's mainly going to be referring to feeding food scraps and how you can prepare food scraps. The best way for worms to process them quickly. And then for the month of December, since the holidays are coming up, we're going to take a little break after next week, and we'll be back on January 4th. And I think that we got a lot of questions about storing worm castings and vermicompost today. So I think that would be a good topic to cover then. So that'll be January. Next week, we'll be back the 14th. And then after that, we'll be back on January 4th of 2023.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks a lot. Thank you, Troy. We will see you. We'll see you soon.
See you, everybody.